Welcome to Act Now, everyone. I'm Julianna Forlano. Ben Burgis is joining us today. You know him as a columnist from Jacobin magazine. He is also the author of several books, most recently Christopher Hitchens, What He Got Right, How He Went Wrong, and Why He Still Matters. He is joining us to do the headlines, one of my most favorite parts of this show, coming up right now. Professor Burgis, thank you for joining me on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Juliana.
Yeah, no, it's very good to have you here. Doing headlines with you is always we changed the title, as you can see, to Headlines with Lefties, Ben Burgis edition. So
nice.
I'm looking forward to that. Let's just start with your new piece. You had a piece out recently in the Daily Beast. Excellent. Neither party cares about the working class. Pretty good. I just watched Marianne Williamson on Bill Maher say basically the same thing. Unfortunately, well, let's talk about how Democrats would happily union bust and put a union busting lawyer on the Supreme Court. What is going on with that?
Yeah, so one of the judges who the Biden administration, by its own admission, is considering for Stephen Breyer's Supreme Court seat is J. Michelle Childs, who worked. She was like a partner at this union busted law firm in South Carolina. You know, she represented multiple companies whose workers were trying to organize. And
she is black. Am I right? Because they're doing the whole.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's like literally their defense of it. You know, that quoted in the piece White House spokesman who said, well, you know, she has amazing credentials, and she's one of the first black women to be a partner at a major law firm in South Carolina. So it's like, okay, right? So she's a union buster, but she's one of the first black women to
the rights of other African Americans and other working people. Yes, we love her. No, I mean that is. And Bernie got in so much hot water for being just focusing on the economics and not bringing race issues into his platform, at least at the beginning. Your comment on this.
Well, there is a Bernie connection, because the reason apparently why she's being considered, or the optimistic version, is maybe they're only making a show of considering her and they're not really going to do it. But one way or the other. Oh my
God, that's so the denial. That's like, well, no, he's not really going to drive the car after having 17 beers. Oh, he is. You know what I mean? This is like so denial. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, her big backer is Jim Clyburn from the same state, South Carolina, who is, of course, the person who probably did more than anybody, except for President Obama, to make sure that Bernie didn't get the 2020 nomination.
So Biden's saying, "Oh, we're going to put her on the Supreme Court, and therefore Jim Clyburn will win the seat."
Well, I mean, I think Clyburn's fine, where he is, but I think that the suspicion would be that it was like, because that's basically what saved Biden's candidacy in 2020, is when Clyburn endorsed him before the South Carolina primary. Because remember, I mean, like, I don't know, like it feels like something from the Ford administration or something, like early 2020 seems so long ago, but but like Biden hadn't won anything, when South Carolina happened. It was at that point, it was between Bernie and like Pete Buttigieg, as weird as that is to think about. And yeah, right. And because remember, they made a.
I know, and Bernie's probably not going to run again for at least the president, and Buttigieg is just shining up his, his loafers to get up on there. It's another point and another. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, he'd be a wonderful presidential candidate if not for the fact that he's awful and nobody likes him. But
that he's a corporatist and he would do additional things to forward the corporate state. Other than that, you know, he's very friendly.
Other than those things is great. So like in 2020, Clyburn endorsed Biden, which, you know, was this big boost and, you know, let him win South Carolina and then, like, you know, becoming like the person everybody consolidated behind Super Tuesday. And Clyburn wants Judge J. Michelle Childs for the Supreme Court. So, and they've even said, like, even if they don't pick her for the Supreme Court, you know, they want her, you know, like at least on the DC District Court. And either way, this is crazy because if you believe that this is a, you know, pro-labor administration, what are they doing? Like, why would they want this person in any kind of position of power, you know, with a record like that? But again, their defense of it is that, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, she helped diversify the ranks of union busters in South Carolina, you know, which kind of says everything, right? Because like you said earlier, it's not like, you know, Black women would disproportionately benefit as a group from a stronger labor movement and higher wages for the working poor and, you know, all of that, right? Of course they would. But the problem is, you know, I think if you read like Thomas Frank's book, Listen Liberal, you know, it's like really good on this for a few years ago, that it's like what liberalism or like the kind of liberalism that's dominant in the Democratic Party right now has really done increasingly in the last, you know, several decades is they've redefined social justice as the quest for a more diverse ruling class that, you know.
Well put. So well said. I mean, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yikes.
Like, you know, injustice just is, you know, barriers to the meritocratic advancement of, you know, the best and the brightest, you know, from each group, which of course leaves behind like, you know, 99.9% of everybody because, you know, like only 9 people at the time could be on the Supreme Court, you know, and not very many more could be like CEOs and all of that stuff. Whereas things like, you know,
I mean, identity politics seems to be crumbling because we've got that anti-women's rights lady on the Supreme Court. Now we're going to put an anti-workers' rights possibly lady on the Supreme Court, and you would imagine. It's just it's mind blowing. It's like if Sonia Sotomayor all of a sudden was like, I want every Latinx person out, you know, it's just, it's like, and that, you know, I mean, it really goes to this idea that people are people and the packaging doesn't matter. It's who you know, it's the content of the character issue, you know, it's content of your character, not the color of your skin or gender or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly should be like it again.
Well, hopefully we're getting to that part because I feel like that kind of stuff actually undermines our side more than the other side. I mean, they're racist and Nazis, but like we're the ones who are pushing this agenda. And I'm going to get so in trouble because it's not like there's not racial inequality. So go ahead.
Of course, there's racial inequality, but at the same time, I guess what I find useful is think about, okay, what are we actually talking about for the most part? We talk about racial inequality, like people used a lot of terms, and like, you know, very mainstream Democrats use these terms now, you know, like, you know, structural racism or systemic racism. And I always want to like yell at the TV, like, what structure are you talking about? Tell me the system that you're.
Yeah.
I know
the one you're about to vote against. Right? You know? Is it that one? That's the one. The Medicare for all throw in the toilet. That's the one you're. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, I think a lot of times, you know, I mean, what people mean when they use these phrases is either like, you know, P plus P, right? You know, people in power having, you know, acting on prejudices. That certainly exists. You know, that's definitely, you know, part of it. But like, seems like the main thing people are really talking about is just the way that, you know, the apartheid history of the United States has these long-term ripple effects whereby Black people are disproportionately more likely than, you know, white people to be at the bottom of the economic ladder. And yeah, that's bad. But then the question is, why is it bad and what's the solution to it? Because if the reason that it's bad is like just the disproportionality, that's the bad part, right? Then like, again, justice would mean that we had, you know, exactly the demographically right proportion of every group living in grinding poverty and being, you know, subjected to militarized policing and, you know, all of that stuff. And the same thing, you know, on the top. And that
Absolutely.
that doesn't sound very just to me, right? I think the thing that's, you know, the thing that's fundamentally unjust about that isn't, you know, who is there, right? Like who is on the bottom, although that's certainly a you know, vivid reminder that there's nothing like meritocratic about it. But like that's not it, right? I mean, the unjust thing is that anybody has to live under those conditions.
Exactly. Thank you. That's an excellent argument that no one's listening to. I do want to say, definitely go and listen to Ben's podcast. Give them an argument. This is very important. I want to get back to a point that you made in the article about how Biden is just not a working class hero that he paints himself to be. I mean, he talked about the PROS Act, and then he, you know, it's very convenient that there's a mansion and a cinema that everyone can point to and pretend they're progressive anti-corporatist angels, and everything would be perfectly wonderful if those two, you know, cogs, whatever.
Well, that's the thing. Like, because people who didn't like this article, I actually didn't hear anybody comment on it on the other half. I guess nobody really wants to fight about that part. But like people who didn't like the half of the article about the Democrats, like, oh, but like that's not fair because Biden wants this and that and the other thing and all that stuff that, you know, you just rattled off. But it's like, does he? Because it doesn't seem like they're trying very hard. I remember yeah, right. A lot can be blamed on Manchin. Cinnamon, it's complicated because Manchin and Cinnamon do exist, and there really are things they probably would do without them and all that. But like last year, they when minimum wage, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour was going to go into, you know, reconciliation, so it could be voted on, and even Joe Manchin wasn't willing to, you know, take the hit on that one, I guess.
I mean, you do have some progressives who are like Ilhan Omar. Here's the other. Let's move on to the other story, Giancarlo. Ilhan Omar and Fetterman, who's in Pennsylvania. They're backing the Starbucks unionization wave. I mean, the unions just keep on coming. REI is unionizing, or at least they're trying to. Can you talk about the I mean, Biden might not be pro-labor, but there are people who are pro-labor, right? Who are.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say when they were going to do minimum wage to reconciliation, they didn't do it because they said the parliamentarians said they couldn't, even though that's like literally a staffer they could just fire whenever they felt like it. So, and you know, who gives non-binding opinions? That shows how much they care about that. But yeah, I think, so I think this is the real thing. Like, so if you think that neither party really cares about this stuff, that, you know, Democrats make
so the other party definitely doesn't, but Democrats are making moves, right? I hate it when we do. I don't want to do the absolute.
Yeah, sure, but like I think that like
if you have to vote for one of the parties.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't expect them to then not be a non-corporate.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you live in like one of the like 5 states where it would actually make a difference how you vote in the presidential election, then like, sure, you know, you have a choice between the party that's 10,000 miles away from where you want to the party that's 100,000 miles away from where you want, right? Like you do what you have to do.
Right. I think that's the expedient thing to do. I think that not expedient, but I think that's, you know, a necessary thing to do, but then not just sit back and hope that was saved by Joe Biden or some.
Exactly, right. Biden's not going to do it. Republicans for sure aren't going to do it. I mean, that was the other half of that article, that the Republicans, like the people in the Republican Party who make the biggest deal about being populist, I mean, are still just like total Reaganites. That they, Marco Rubio introduced his big pro-worker populist legislation finally, and it was literally a bill to legalize company unions. That's how ridiculous these people are.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, it is interesting that those two places like Starbucks, you know, the right likes to paint progressives as latte sipping latte sipping limousine folks. And honestly, there are latte sipping. I sip latte. I like latte. Latte sipping limousine people. And the latte sipping limousine section of the Democratic Party, right? The ones who are not necessarily going to vote pro-labor themselves because they don't see themselves as part of that party.
They might be to a certain extent, there are, I think one of the comments about this I ever heard that rang most true to me, right? Is a couple of years ago, Crystal Ball was talking about said, okay, just spend all this time in this bougie Virginia suburbs, of DC, and she said, look, a lot of these liberal voters there, if you gave them a poll and said, $15 an hour, yes or no, the whatever, give everybody health care, yes or no, a lot of these Virginia suburbs, upper income liberals there, would say all the things you'd want them to say, but that's not the issue. The issue is, are they ever going to prioritize any of that stuff? And no, they're not, right? Because that's just not what they really care about.
Do you think they're ever going to see, the fact that they are one in intent with, how fascist does the right have to get for these folks that you're talking about? And I was living in Park Slope. It was the same thing. I was the only one there were a few of us with Bernie signs out. Everyone else was like, Hillary! And they thought they were on this moral high ground. They're like, of course I would vote for a $15 minimum wage. I want those people to be okay. But then when it really, those people, but it's, exactly. Can't we just see that we're all one interest group against fascists?
Well, the thing is, I think that people like you're talking about, the most
white collar people, collar upper income people.
Yeah, the most revealing thing is think about those yard signs. I'm sure you've seen a million of them. In this house, we believe that Black Lives Matter, love is love. You have 20 liberal bullet points under there. And you notice there's never anything about $15 minimum wage in there, right? There's nothing about healthcare in there. And that's the whole thing, because that's not really what they care about. They might, in the abstract, they might be yeah, sure, that'd be nice, but they don't care enough that it's going to be prioritized over whatever culture war thing is driving them at any given moment, or just whether they think that I don't know, the Hillary just seems more sensible to them, or whatever the thing is at any given time, which is why I think, I think stuff like the Starbucks workers unionizing is so important, because it's why is it that, even if you think, sure, right, is the Biden administration as anti-labor as Republicans? No, it's not. I'm not going to, there are differences, but given that you just can't expect the Democratic Party as it exists right now to prioritize, the living standards and, empowerment of workers.
Why?
So
yes.
Okay, but then the question is why, right? Why don't working class people have very much pull with the leadership of either party right now? And I think
it's because big labor, it's because they started taking money in, I guess, what was it, the 80s? The Democrats started taking money from, they used to take a lot of money from labor. That was who basically supported the Democrats for a lot of decades. And then they started, taking money from these other sources as well as labor, so they could hold on to their labor creds.
And meanwhile, the actual union density has gone, has gone down, and there's 11 point something % of workers who are even in unions right now, and it's way less in the private sector. So that's why stuff like 50 Starbucks or however many it's up to at this point, filing for union elections is so important, because if you can't expect the latte sipping liberals to
support the people who make their lattes,
on their own, just out of the kindness of their hearts, then the actual latte makers need to organize so they can get it for themselves. And once you have a more organized working class, it's going to be able to exercise a lot more political power too.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Your new book, Christopher Hitchens, What He Got Right, How He Went Wrong, and Why He Still Matters. I always enjoyed hearing Hitchens speak until he, whatever.
Sure.
Talk about I thought about doing a segment with you, maybe a recurring, like a WWHD. What would Hitchens do? What would Hitchens say? What do you think his response would be, given all that you know about his body of work, about what's happening with organized labor right now in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that he would have gotten excited about things like that again. I mean, I think that like what really
I love it. Hitchens' excitement is like, yeah, that's his excitement, just higher.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's possible, because I mean that is the kind of thing that he cared a lot about, in like the 70s and 80s, 90s. But I think that like really over the course of the 90s, especially, and like I think a lot of people who like maybe only got political in 2016 don't really remember in retrospect just how bad that the 1990s were, for like any kind of left, that it was a period where like all the stuff that like we're rightly mad about Biden for now, like, other than some grotesque foreign policy things, like if you like kind of go through the list in your head, like 90% of it's stuff that he's not doing, right? It's like, oh, he isn't doing, X, Y, and Z, and he should be doing it. And, fair enough, he's not, and you should be mad about it. But like Bill Clinton's Democratic president of the 1990s, and, he spent his presidency, destroying the welfare system and signing free trade agreements and, deregulating Wall Street and, things like that. Right. And that was like the left end of the mainstream spectrum in the 90s. And I think over the course of this period, like I think especially after the Cold War, there was this really pervasive sense that, these kinds of big issues about how you organize a society were just kind of over, and capitalism won. And I think to a certain extent, Hitchens like got caught up in that and was like really demoralized in a lot of his previous socialist convictions. So I think that, so yeah, I mean, I certainly hope that if he were alive now, he would, like he would see some of this stuff going on, and he would like kind of find his way back to like some of the passion about the sort of lefty economic stuff, which is really, not entirely, but like starts to be like mostly absent, from his work in like the last like decade of his life. Like the book he wrote about the Clintons, No One Left to Lie To, is which the title kind of says it all.
And now they're back.
I know, right?
They found some more people to lie to.
Exactly.
Well, people who were young and not alive, while Clinton was president, can vote now, so they have a whole new crop of people to lie to.
Exactly. So, like, because in that book, I mean, there is some real passion about economic issues. He just, he's got a chapter where he goes into all this grisly detail about what welfare reform, was like, to the Clinton administration, and young mothers who, not very many months after, birth, having to like go work in, like Tyson foods and stuff like that to keep their benefits. And it's really like blood curdling stuff, but I mean, like that is a lot of what that.
You just gave me a great idea for a book. I'll let you know. We'll call it Motherfuckers, and it'll be about corporations who don't tell anyone. John Carlo, you're gonna have to bleep this section, okay? About corporations who screw young mothers. This is terrific. Great idea. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Ben, I'm gonna because in the interest of time, I definitely want to hit this story. But the next, one of the things that we've been talking about is on the show is pandemic profiteering. We had John Nichols on talking about that, and he has a new piece out he wrote a book, and he has a new piece out in The Nation. Pfizer's revenue doubled. That's the big headline. Pfizer's revenue doubled, and Nichols says it's nothing short of pandemic profiteering. And then the article goes on to kind of talk about how It's just so bad. You know, the idea that we all have to share this sacrifice while this guy is the image up there of the guy. And maybe we just have the headline. I don't think we have the guys. Yeah, no, we don't have that. Under this headline on The Nation is a picture of the chairman, Albert Bourla. He's the CEO of Pfizer. I mean, these guys, I think they're making, what was it? I want to get it right. The actual money. It was either like $1 million a minute or $1 billion an hour or something. Let me get the actual amount here. It's just absolutely obscene. What would a just society do at this moment?
Yeah. So the thing that stuck out for me, the article, is that at this point, if Pfizer was like a sovereign nation, it would have like the 66th biggest economy in the world or something. Like, so it's like way ahead of a lot of actual nation states.
It's $1 million an hour. I found it.
Okay. All right.
Just saying.
All right.
So you can be totally disgusted while you're watching this show.
Enough hours that you start talking about real money. Yeah. So that's, yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. And like, I think that a just society wouldn't have a private pharmaceutical industry in the beginning. I mean, I think it's obscene that you get to have, like,
wouldn't it be nice if we had at the beginning of the pandemic, we're like, we need to do things for the public good. We're going to commandeer the Pfizer, vaccine plant at in New Jersey or wherever it was. I think in Mississippi or somewhere where they're, because isn't the science mostly backed and funded by our American tax dollars?
Yeah. I mean,
so the vaccine itself, the technology for the vaccine should be ours.
Yeah, I think pretty much all the vaccines, like either most of it's funded, if not by the U.S. government, then by other governments, like that they have that, but then the question is, again, why is this funneled into, the private sector anyway? Like what's the, I mean, it's not like,
because there's a big club and we ain't in it, as George Carlin used to say.
Yes, I love that bit. Yeah, no, but that's the thing, right? Because it's like, and this is a little new. I mean, like it's not like the Manhattan Project was like a subcontract with McNuclear, and they got like, and then like the government had to like subcontract out the results or something, right? Like we are capable of just doing direct research without looping in private companies. So yeah, no, this is ridiculous. And certainly the fact that it's like I mean, actually here, let me just be more succinct. I think what a just society would do would be the second it was like they'd gone through all the tests, they, gone through all the, like whatever,
trials,
like, they'd gone through all the trials, it was enough for at least emergency authorization, which it was, which is what it was initially. That the second that emergency authorization would happen, what a just society would do would be on whitehouse.gov. It would post the technical specifications, everything that everybody in the world would need to manufacture it for themselves.
Yeah. And then, honestly, I think, a lot of this, not to get into the big anti-vaccine hesitancy controversy here, but I think people are really bristling against a corporation making this enormous amount of money, and that profit motive undermines trust in both the corporation and the government, who's supposed to be regulating the corporation. If that money was going to be coming back into the government and going back into building, I don't know what, giving Medicare for all, or I mean, $1 million, we could do a lot with $1 million an hour. And as you said, that vaccine recipe for, like, you made it sound much nicer, just gets posted on the internet. There would be this transparency that would allow for people to trust the science behind the vaccination. And then the Russian propaganda machine would have a lot less to kind of
I mean,
bite their teeth into.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, right. So, I mean, I think that that's right. So I think that if it was transparent, that would definitely take away, some of that. I mean, I also think part of the problem is too, that like one thing that people say, right, who are vaccine hesitant is and I mean, this is not me making this up. I mean, people do say this, that it's like, okay, wait a second, you know, how's it free? Nothing's free, right? You know, that's not how this works, right? You know, like something's going on here,
right?
Like, and there is
who paid for my vaccine? Why are they making so much money? Mine was free at the drugstore.
yeah, exactly. And I think that,
wow, that's something no one's talking about. So the government is paying for these, right? It's not like they're donated.
No, exactly. Government's paying for it. It's just, again, why does it, you know, why do Pfizer shareholders have to take a cut, you know, for like the government paid, you know, to give people vaccines? I mean, that part's good, but I mean, like, why is Pfizer part of this at all? I mean, that's ridiculous. There's no reason. There's no reason that has to be.
It's a big graft of the American taxpayer. You know, it's just a giant money laundering operation.
Yeah,
for the rich.
No,
exactly. Another one. We have several.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what else, to connect the last two stories? You know what else would help with vaccine hesitancy is a much stronger labor movement, because also one reason that, like, I mean, it's not like the majority or anything, but it's like a real chunk. It's like 10% or something of people who haven't gotten vaccinated yet say that, like, one of their reasons for hesitancy is that they're afraid if they had, side effects, you know, they wouldn't be able to take time off work. So,
right. Damn. So they're risking their lives.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's completely. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. There's no reason, like. Yeah, if we had the kind of society where nobody was worried that it would be a big deal if they had to take a day or two off work, and also it wasn't quite such a novelty that, you know, they got free healthcare, you know,
right.
like that alone would like get like those two things alone would get, like, you know, again, I'm not saying a majority, but a big chunk of people who aren't vaccinated get their shot.
Ben Burgis, what's coming up on the show this week?
So coming up on the show this week on Monday, we're not having, as we're recording today on the 14th, we're not doing a show tonight because my wife would be mad at me, but you know,
you gave it away. We're pretending that we're live on the 17th here, but we're not. But hopefully no big union labor headline comes out between then and now, and people are like, why aren't they talking about this? Anyway, yes.
But then
toward the end of the week, what's happening on Friday?
Yeah. So the next episode, the 21st, the next regular episode, Monday night, we are going to be checking in with, you know, our old friend Jordan Peterson has another book out. He seems very agitated about a lot of things. It's been a little while since we checked in on his activities. So I'm going to have... On the
22nd, you're going to have that fabulous Julianna Furlano on the program. I'm looking forward to seeing that and being that.
Yes. The day after that on the call-in show, I'm going to have Julianna Furlano on. So really looking forward to that.
She is great, and she's so happy that she's on the call-in so she doesn't have to wear a shirt. I mean, you know, like a professional shirt. Okay, we'll end it on that note. Ben, thank you so much for joining me today on the program. It's always a pleasure. I appreciate your point of view so much. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks so much, Juliana.
You're watching Act TV. Thanks for watching. We will be back on Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed our program. Ben Burgis, go find him on the internets. I've got all the information down here, so you can just go that way. And again, see you Tuesday. Thanks. Bye.